Alright, we're going to be looking at African geography and throwing in some cultural elements. I just want to make a big, broad statement that Africa is not one culture, one idea, one concept. Not everyone in Africa does the same thing. Not everyone in Africa is born in a jungle. In fact, no one's born in a jungle. You live in a house. And they're born in houses or huts or apartment, just like Americans or any other continent. So there's a lot of diversity, and we'll look at this diversity starting out with the physical features. First of all, Africa is the second largest continent in the world, and yet it only holds 10% of the world's population. So we just got done talking about South Asia and India, and East Asia with China with 1 and 2 in world population, and especially with India, a really large population density. In Africa, we're not going to see that. We're going to see a wide open areas of just nature and small villages. Quite different landscape from where we were previously at. There's 3 big geographical features I want to talk about real quick. You probably already know them. It's not anything difficult here to understand. The Sahara Desert is the hottest desert in the largest hot desert in the world, and it is spreading. It's growing, which is caused because poor farming techniques. They're ripping out the grasslands that are right outside of the Sahara, and with ripping out this grassland, it's causing the desert to be able to spread into those areas, and that's not good, obviously. The Savanna is another region. It's the largest savanna is located in Africa. This is where you see wide open spaces and very few trees. This is what a lot of people think in their minds when they think of savannas. Just think of the African safaris and the tropical grassland. Another region is the African rainforest, about 15% of Africa. It is shrinking. The same reason why the Sahara is spreading, because people are coming in and cutting down the trees and planting crops, or a lot of it is through grazing of cattle. The cattle to sell beef and to make a profit selling the meat. Growing the cattle has caused the demand for growing cattle has caused the forests to be cut down. You might have heard of someone called Diane Fossey. She is famous in the movie Gorillas in the Mist. Depicts her life as she went in to help the gorillas, the mountain gorillas of, I believe it was Rwanda, to protect them, and she was later killed by poachers. So this is a big problem. Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya have created national parks and is trying to do everything to keep these species around. Mount Kilimanjaro is the largest mountain in Africa. It's a volcano. And the cool thing about it is right near the equator, and yet you can see snow at the top of the mountain. Pretty cool. Great Rift Valley is another geographical feature I want you to be aware of. It goes the whole way up through Africa into the Middle East, and this is where the first hominids were discovered. These are ancestors of humans, and this is where the first humans came about. Many scientists believe Africa, the birthplace of humanity. This is a cool area of the Great Rift Valley. It's Victoria Falls. These falls are the widest falls, I believe, in the world, if not the widest, close to the widest falls. Largest area of water coming down, and you can see the Great Rift Valley in the middle there. Africa has a lot of natural resources. If Africa is able to end its corruption and create an idea of nationalism and an idea of unity in many of these countries, they really have the ability to get going. Oil, coffee, cocoa, gold, diamonds. I have the quote "blood diamonds" below the word diamonds because Ivory Coast and other countries along this western part of Africa, you're seeing people going into villages and taking the kids, forcing them to work in these diamond mills or finding diamonds, and they end up into forced labor, and wars have been fought over these resources. I like to say, when Europe leaves, and we'll talk about this, there's a power grab, people fighting for power. If I had $200 million in the front of the class, it wouldn't take long for people to start fighting over that money, where the class was fine and everyone got along, and then all of a sudden there's this huge natural resource found. Well, what's going to happen? People are going to start fighting over it. And that's what you see in Africa, and you see that in every continent. There's no exception here. The physical features, some of the problems being where they're at, allow mosquitoes to spread something very serious called malaria. 1 million children are killed every year through malaria. There is medicine. I have to take malaria when I go to Africa this summer, and there are things that you can take to help you if you do get malaria so you don't die. Medicine is expensive, and so the common way in which they fight malaria is simply by not getting the mosquitoes to bite them. How do they do that? Something called bed nets. They sleep in beds with nets around them so the mosquitoes don't bite them. Let's move into the physical geography, or the cultural geography. I want you to be aware, we've been talking about nationalism in Europe, how that grew, and nationalism in China. And Africa, there is obviously traces of nationalism. I mean, there's pride in your country. But tribalism is something that's really big in Africa. And there's this idea of a tribal identity rather than a national identity. And we saw in class the video on the scarification. And scarifications can be a mark. And there's thousands of different languages and customs with thousands of different tribes. There's a whole bunch of different tribes, and that can create conflict because these tribes were forced to be part of the same country. And we'll look at that when Europe comes in and carves out these countries, and now you have all these tribes fighting for power to control the country. If that's confusing, it won't be later on. Here is just some different ideas, different cultures in Africa. Many people in Africa go to work in a car, have cell phones, play video games, watch TV, and pretty much the same, listen to Western music, you name it. But there are some tribes that keep its traditions, and these are just some examples I wanted you to see. I got these from anthropology book, and here just different parts of ancient customs or traditions that still continue in some of these tribes. Like the third point on this tribe right here, the women pick their husbands on the way they dance and look. So like, the girl would be like, I fell in love with you when I saw you doing the Running Man, something like that. Like if you got a wicked wave, or like a wicked robot, like you could really get a girl. Stick fights, go on YouTube, check those out, they're pretty cool. Alright, so this is two ancient religions, they're still practiced today, but they have their roots early religions here. Animism and ancestor worship. Same concept that souls and spirits exist, and they can not only influence you, but they can take over your body. They can cause these souls, there's evil spirits and there's good spirits. They can cause you to fall in love, they can cause you to have your husband divorce you. They can cure a disease, it could give you asthma. There's war spirits, there's peace spirits, and these spirits can tap into. With ancestor worship, your deceased family members will tap into you. If you didn't give your father a good burial, your father will haunt you. And the most organized concept of animism is voodooism, and we'll look at that later. Overall, there's two main religions. Animism and ancestor worship are not the most practiced religions in Africa. The two most practiced religions in Africa are Christianity and Islam. And you can see here how Christianity and Islam is a fine line going right below the sub-Sahara, and down in the Horn of Africa is Muslim. And then below that line in the purple, that's Christianity. Christianity is growing leaps and bounds in Africa. I believe in the book called God is Back, the book argues that not just Christianity, but religion is starting to grow again, leaps and bounds all throughout the world. That 40,000 people in Africa 40,000 Africans convert to Christianity a day. So Christianity and Islam are certainly the two key religions in Africa. There you have it.